Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Janakalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahmavidvaram. Okay, wonderful. So let's read what we covered last time. And then we will move forward. Okay. Suramandiratarumoolanivasah Shayyabhutalamajinam vasah Sarvaparigraha bhogatyagah Kasya sukham na karoti viragah Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate Yogarato va bhogarato va sangarato va sangavihina yasya brahmani ramate chittam nandati nandati nandatyeva bhaja govindam 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 bhaja mudhamate. Okay. So last time, the theme that we were looking at is independence is joy. So verse number 18 and 19 were covered last time. And in verse number 18, we see a person who is what we call somebody who has vairagya. Vairagya means dispassion. But dispassion, don't take it as somebody who's like not passionate, right? This passion means somebody who's removed from the passion, disengaged from the passion, in the sense that many things are happening, but they are disengaged from it. So here, Sura Mandira Taru Mula Nivasa, somebody who's dwelling in the temples, in the shade of the trees. Shaya Bhutala Majinam Vasa, sleeping on the bare ground, and somebody who has skin as their clothing, right? Sarva Parigraha Bhogatyagaha, one who has given up, the thirst to enjoy and possessions. Kasya Sukham Nakaroti Viraga. So what joy will this person not have? So this is the kind of joy a person has from two things. One is from living simply, just living simply, living as per their means and being adaptable. And two, being independent, right? Not depending on anybody or anything for their own comfort. So this is a vairagi, dispassionate person. Because when we depend on people, when we depend on things, what happens is they go. At some point in time, everything will go, right? People will come, will go. Events will come, will go. Experiences will come, go. So at some point in time, things will come and go. So there's this very beautiful shloka from Vairagya Shatkam. This Vairagya Shatakam is by Bhartrihari and talks about 100 verses of dispassion. So you can just imagine what was in his mind. I'll read it to you and then we'll see what he says. Akrantam maranena janma jarasa chatyujvalam yovanam Santosho dhanalipsaya shamasukham prodangana vipramehi loker matsaribhirgunavan bhuvo vyalair nripa durjanaihi asthairyena vibhutayopyupahata grastam kinkena va. So what he says here is that akrantam, everything is attacked by something else at some point in time. Janma, the earth is going to be attacked by death. At some point in time, whatever is born will go. Ujwalam yovanam, that bright youth, the bright youth will be attacked by old age that we cannot prevent, right? There's old age, there's wrinkles and gray hair. Santosho dhanalipsaya, contentment. When one is content, santosha means content. And if somebody gets something more than what we have, dhanalipsaya, then greed comes. Right? This will happen. Greed will come. Shamasukham, that's control of senses, that peace that we get from the control of senses. Prodangana vibramaihi, it comes to a disturbance when there is lust or passion for a man or a woman. That it gets very disturbed. Loker matsarabhir guna, when somebody has very good qualities, very nice, honest, dutiful, wonderful qualities, but that can also go and get attacked by jealousy. Because when one sees somebody higher than us or going in a different place, like, oh, I want to also be like that. So boom, all the virtues fall. Then vanabhuvo, the forest is attacked by vyalehi, by beasts. Nripa, kings are attacked by durjanehi, by wicked people. Kings and anybody has property, has territory, attacked. Asthairyena vibhutaya, anybody has powers, it's attacked by impermanence, because that power will go. It's just about time. It will go. And in this way, what is not swallowed by what? So everything in life is swallowed or consumed by something else. Grasta means it's really swallowed. It's just a matter of time before something gets swallowed by something else. We're so happy when we have something, but at some point in time, that will also go when we least expect it, right? We don't expect these things to happen. Whatever's happening now, we didn't expect these things to happen. But somehow or some way, this is the way of the world. So that's what it says. So the one who is independent, the one who does not depend on other factors for their joy, that person has the greatest joy. The person who has realized that whatever I want in this life, in this path, in this journey, I'm not going to get from the world. I'm definitely not going to get it from the world. The world can provide me glitz, glamour, hints of pleasure, but will not provide me this everlasting joy. Therefore, I choose not to pursue it for that joy. I may engage in it, I may be in it, but I know my joy is not there. And therefore, my pursuit for joy comes inside. That person is very, very happy. And this is the person who comes to the seat of knowledge. The person who understands that now I have to look within comes to spiritual knowledge. And when one comes to spiritual knowledge, what happens is they gain this liberation, or what we call Jivan Mukti. This Jivan Mukti means one is liberated while living. So in verse 19, we saw last week also, what is this person who's liberated while living? What is this person like? So we saw they are the biggest wonder. Wow, with or without. Because they can be with something and they can be without something. There's no insistence and there's no resistance. So a liberated person, yogaratova bhogaratova. whether they are sitting quietly in meditation, right? Whether they're in their own reflection, in their own prayer or peace, they are fine. Bhogaratova. But it just so happened that some point in time, so many people came over. I wanted to sit quietly. I wanted to do my own thing. But so many people came over. There was so much going on, so many things happening. I'm in the midst of pleasure. They are absolutely fine. Whether they are in yoga, engaged in yoga, or in bhoga. We find our saints and sages, although a lot of them prefer a life of solitude, to prefer to be on their own, they never pushed people away, in the sense that if we look at Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi Ji, because he spent so much time in solitude, but a point in time came where people were coming to him, flocking to him, and he just welcomed everybody. Okay, fine. The same thing happened with Swami Chinmayananda Ji. People just kept giving him things, kept wanting, to take him here, to take him there. And really, he has no need for any of it. But he said, let it come. One time, one brahmachari went to visit Swami Chinmayananda, Puja Gurudev, and someone knocked on his door and said, here's your dinner. And Gurudev's dinner was a kashaya, like just a glass of, liquid. That was his dinner. And the brahmachari looked at him. He said, that's your dinner? And Gurudev said, do you think I really enjoy eating all of this stuff and going here and there? I just, he just does it because everybody enjoys. Oh, okay, enjoy. So they never saw these things as a hindrance to their liberation. They never felt like, oh, I need to be in a certain place and time then only I will feel God. No. Yogaratova, bhogaratova, sangaratova means around people. They could be in loads of thousands, millions of people around them. They're still living in God. Sangavihina. Or they're completely alone by themselves, with not even a sound of anything there. They are in God. Why? Yasya brahmani ramate chittam. Their mind is just dwelling in that truth. It's never disconnected from that truth because they have become one with it. Nandati, nandati, nandatyeva. They rejoice, they verily rejoice, they verily rejoice. So this is a person who's truly a wonder. Sometimes we think if somebody looks spectacular, looks great, that's wow. Somebody has an amazing house or gone to an amazing vacation, wow. Someone with a lot of wealth, wow. But this is wow. A person who can live with or without. A person who's never disconnected from the truth. It doesn't matter. Because it's not that you only see God when the eyes are closed. When the eyes are open, we see God. When the eyes are closed, we see God. In fact, the only thing there is God. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. Whatever we see is only actually God. It's only actually that existence, consciousness, bliss. Whatever we hear is only God. Whatever we touch, taste is only God. How can there be anything else? We see a variety of names and forms and expression because these are manifestations of that divinity. So to an enlightened being, everything is God. Whether they're alone, in company, whether they're in yoga, they're practicing austerities, or bhoga, whether they're in the midst of enjoyment. Not that they ask for it, but sometimes it comes to them. Then what do? Oh, they're okay. Revel in it. It's God. And this is how they live their lives. Now, how do we take this verse for a seeker? We may be not in that state of enlightenment or liberated while living. How does a seeker take this verse? So sometimes we feel like, how do I separate my spiritual life from my work life? as we grow older and become more mature in this path, we understand that there's actually only spiritual life. There is only spiritual life because everything can be seen as connecting us to God. Work is a prayer. At taking care of the home, that's a prayer. Going out for a walk, that's a prayer. Being with children is a prayer. Every single thing is a connection or a way to get to God. Now, if we see our lives like this, where there's no work-life balance, there's that balance, this much time at home, this much time here, this much time here, and allocate where to do what. If we just look at life as a whole and say, look, it doesn't matter because everything is going to be a way to God. Everything is going to be a doorway to God. Whether it's sitting with my child or sitting with my spouse, cooking, cleaning, whatever it is. And if we see our lives as this, every single way is a way to God, then there's never a distance felt. We never feel like we're away from the truth or we're away from God or we're not doing this or doing that. It is true, yes, we must have our own sadhana and spiritual practice where we're sitting down quietly. But remember, everything is a way to God. So this verse means this for a seeker, that there's so many beautiful lessons that we can learn from everybody, from a child, from an adult, from a teacher, from just watching people on the road. In Avaduta Gita, there's one beautiful episode where he just sees this lady with two bangles, and she's working, and the two bangles were making noise. So she takes out one. When she takes out the one bangle remains, and there is no more noise. And this Avaduta, we call him, Avaduta means he's a recluse, Avaduta. He said that is what happens when there's non-duality. When there's non-duality, there is no noise. So just see how deep. All he saw was a girl with two bangles. And she removed one, and his mind went to God. So this is our tradition. This is our custom. We don't have a day where we pray or an hour where we pray, because a whole life is a prayer. A whole life is a prayer, and never apart from that. And that's truly wow. And if one can be, then okay, we get what we want. Okay, we don't get what we want. It's okay, because in life we won't always get what we want, right? And it's good. It's good. Imagine if we always got what we wanted, we would be spoiled brats, right? So it's good. We didn't always get what we want. So if it comes, okay. If it doesn't come, okay. There's a lesson here to take me higher. Let me just take that, and I will be fine. So take the lesson, and not the craving of this should happen, that should happen. A wise person or a seeker, true seeker, lives life without any insistence or resistance. Just lives. So this is this verse. Now today, we're going to move on to the next verse. Somebody might ask then, Adi Shankaracharya-ji, how do I get there? You're talking about this being with or without, being totally okay with or without. How do I get there? Could you please tell me? So in verse 20, what we learn is a little bit goes a long way. So let us read this verse. Bhagavad Gita Kinchidadhita.
Bhagavad Gita Kinchidadhita.
Ganga Jala Lava Karnika Pita.
Ganga Jalalava Karika Pita.
Sakradapi yena murari samarcha.
Sakradapiyena Surari Nircha.
Kriyate tasya yamena na charcha.
Priyate Tamya Yamina Charcha.
So I'll read the verse and then you can read with me. Bhagavad Gita Kinchidadhita Ganga Jalalava Karnika Pita Sakridapi Yena Murari Samarcha Kriyate Tasya Yamena Nacharcha Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. So what does this verse say? Bhagavad Gita Kinchid Adhita. So that Bhagavad Gita, if one has studied Adhita, even a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita, Ganga Jalalava Karnika Pita. Pita, if one has sipped Karnika, a little lava, drop of jala, of water of Ganga. Sakridapi, just at least once, what happens? Yena Murari Samarcha, the one who, by whom Murari, Lord Krishna, has been worshipped. Samarcha. Kriyate tasya yamena charcha. Of that person, there is na charcha, there is no quarrel with Yama. No quarrel is done with Yama. So, seek Govinda, seek Govinda. To one who has studied the Bhagavad Gita, even just a little bit, to one who has sipped at least a drop of Ganga water, to one who has worshipped at least once Lord Murari, there's no discussion with Yama, the Lord of Death. So what does this mean? Bhagavad Gita is, one of our beautiful scriptures. It's the essence of all the Upanishads, right? The essence of all the Upanishads. And in that Bhagavad Gita, there's a lot of knowledge as well as application of how to live life. And what he's saying here is read less, but reflect more. Read less, but reflect more. Swami Chinmayanandaji used to say, if one is reading the Gita, just read 3 verses a day. That's enough. When we tend to pick up a spiritual book, or any book for that matter, we tend to read it like a storybook, from cover to cover to cover to cover, and we maybe highlight some things and outline some things. But that's not the way to study spirituality, or anything for that matter. When we say Bhagavad Gita Kinchidadhita, this resembles Shravana. Now, I'm just going to share with you, many people say reflect, reflect, reflect. But how do you reflect? So I'm just going to share with you kind of how to reflect. Okay? So here we see, let's say we're doing a verse on the Gita or Bhaja Govindam, whatever it is, right? The first thing is to just have that verse right in front of us. We're reading a verse, we're reading a line, a quote, whatever it is. Have that verse in front of us. And this happens to be 2.14 from the Bhagavad Gita. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agamapayino nityaha Tanstitikshasva Bharata. So read that verse. And we don't have to chant it. I chanted it just so we hear how it sounds. But then see what the words mean. And we can find many texts now with the translation. So we can see what each word means. And if we understand those words, right? So here clearly it explains the words. Then we see what does this verse mean? So particularly in the Bhagavad Gita, this says the contact of senses with objects, O son of Kunti, which cause heat and cold, pleasure and pain, have a beginning and an end. They are impermanent, and therefore endure them bravely, O descendant of Bharata. So with this Shravanam, we're able to make the sentence, we're able to understand it, and also see the connection to the verse, right? Where is this coming in the scripture? It's coming in the second chapter. And why is it coming? Because Arjuna is going through ups and downs, and how does he deal with them? So this is Lord Krishna's advice. So this portion makes up the Shravanam. Shravanam, just looking at the verse, seeing the words, understanding what they mean, and this makes Shravanam. And many of us stop here. We stop here, we skim through, and then we go on to the next. But when we do that, what happens is information comes, but transformation doesn't. Huh? So we receive so much information, but no transformations happening. This is what happens with all of the self-help books. We have so many self-help books, but we're not changing because we're not reflecting. In one of the scriptures, it said like a ladle. You take a ladle and you put it in a dal, or soup that you're making, like a big pot of soup, you're putting the ladle in. Now the ladle is in the midst of the great tasty soup, but the ladle cannot taste the soup. Can't taste it. It's right in the middle. You're using the ladle, but it can't taste the soup. The same way, when we just listen or read, we're like the ladle in that big pot of soup. We're around this tasty, tasty soup, but we cannot taste it. We cannot taste it because we have not reflected upon it. So the element of transformation really only comes with mananam. And this is shown by Ganga Jala Lava Kanika Pita. So having drunk, now see here, having drunk just a drop of that Ganga water. We saw last time one of the verses how, Mother Ganga is a place of reform. When somebody goes there and takes a dip, it's really coming out new, just bathing ourselves in this new knowledge. So in the same way, when we perform mananam or reflection, it's like we bathe ourselves. It's like we cleanse ourselves in this spiritual knowledge because we're actually making an attempt to transform. Now, how does one do this, right? So I'll share this with you. And this can be in anything you read, as I said. So transformation really happens when we do mananam. And what happens is we pick, key words or a word to reflect upon. And there's many, many words we can pick here, but I've chosen to pick endurance, or what we say in Sanskrit, titiksha. So just pick a word to reflect upon. You have a verse, pick a word. Then with that word, play around with it, right? There's so many things with endurance. What is endurance really? And how does one practice it? Right? Lord Krishna said, practice it. How do we do that? And when should we practice endurance? Why should we practice it? And should everything in life really be endured? Should we endure that? And what does it mean by pleasure should also be endured? Because it says in this verse that cold and heat, joy and sorrow should be endured. Why should joy be endured? So just by picking a word, just thinking deeply about it, then so many things come out, right? What is this word? What does it mean? When do I practice it? Why, etc. What does all of this really mean? And one takes the next step to see, okay, now make the connection to one's life. How can I make this part of my life here and now? So in the Shravanam portion, It's making the connection with the verse, understanding what the scripture is saying. And once we have clarity about the verse, that's fine. But in Mananam, it's making the connection to one's life now. Okay, now how do I make this part of my life? Because if it's just in the book, that's not going to do anything for me. So this process of reflection is really key when we're reading or listening to anything. And it is said, in the commentary here, Gurudev says that the Ganga stands for spiritual knowledge, right? Flowing from teacher to the taught. And it will only flow and flow and flow when there's reflection, coming on, because that's only when knowledge flows. Otherwise, knowledge goes. Without reflection, knowledge comes in, it goes. With reflection, knowledge comes in and it really flows. Now, the third step, Sakridapi yena murari samarcha. Sometimes we have a difficulty implementing. So yes, we reflected on this knowledge, but sometimes it's hard to still practice it. So what is it said now? Even once, Sakridapi, by whom Murari, here's Lord Krishna, it can be anybody. Samarcha, worship the Lord, worship God, worship that divine, so that we can be helped. Because what we need then at this point is, after doing Shravanam and Mananam, reflecting, and maybe there are some blocks, in us. We call those Viparita Bhavana. There's some blocks in us there's some things that are so deeply rooted that they're so hard to change. That requires special effort, and that effort is called grace. It's not our effort, it's God's effort. That is called grace. So the third part is, even if just once, just think about God, seek God, pray to God, connect with God, and seek that grace, then yes, that flow will be very, very smooth. This can also mean, in a deeper sense, let us say one has come to Shravanam, to listening, to studying the scriptures, and Mananam, to reflecting the scriptures. Let's say one becomes transformed. And the joy of Vedanta is in its practice. Vedanta can bring that immediate bliss, but only when we practice it, not when we listen to it, when we practice it. So let's say one has transformed, and we see that our lives are becoming better. We see that we're calmer, we're more, relaxed. We see things changing within us, and we see changes also around us and the people that we love. What tends to creep in then is what is called the sattvic ego. The sattvic ego, wherein one thinks, oh, I'm such a good person. I'm such a great person. I attend all of these satsangs. I meditate. I do yoga. I'm vegan, whatever. Well, all these kinds of notions are there, that I'm a great person. Now, this is an ego. So here, Sakridapi yena murari samarcha is when we ask God to take away this ego, take away even this notion that I am good, take away this I. Then only we will be set. Because this ego will continue to bother us. Pride may develop, looking down upon others may develop. We may be blind to other people, insensitive, selfish, all kinds of things happen whenever our pride is so high, or whenever our sense of self is so high. I was just reading this beautiful Sanskrit Subhashita. Subhashita means a great saying. And it said, when I knew a little bit, I thought I was all-knowing. But when I spent time with the wise people, I realized how much I really knew. And my pride went away like fever. You know, so that's what it is. So tell Bhagavan or seek grace to also get rid of this ego, get rid of this sattvic ego. Sakradapi yenam murari samacha. And see all of the words here. Huh? Bhagavad Gita kinchit adita. Just a little bit of study of the Bhagavad Gita. Ganga jalalava kanika pita. Just a little bit of drinking the Ganga water. Sakradapi yena murari samacha. Even once, just conversing with that divine. What happens? What's the result of all of this? Kriyate tasya yamena nacharacha. Then there is no dialogue at all with death. There is no quarrel with death, rather. So what does this mean? Now see, in our tradition, death is not something we fear. Death is actually something we embrace. We embrace it, we welcome it. So in this, somebody who has done Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasana, what is their attitude towards death? Their attitude towards death is bring it on. Who can say this? Somebody who has lived their life to the fullest and somebody who's already dead. Now, what do we mean? So the first person is somebody who's lived fully, who's really spent their life in this beautiful pursuit of finding out who they are and has attained that state of contentment. What state of contentment? With or without? Wow. Attain that state of contentment wherein they have nothing to lose and nothing to gain. And life is just happening in and amidst their presence. And they have used their lives fully for the benefit of all. So the person who has lived fully is not afraid of death. When death has to come, let it come. What's the big deal? But also, I mentioned, because one has already died. What does this mean? It means the one who has gained knowledge, their ego is already dead. Their body identification is dead. So they have no sense of identification with the body, with the mind, with the ego. That's all gone. So if that has to go, it's okay. My death is dead, right? There's one beautiful freedom fighter who used to say, my death is dead. So there is no such identification with the body, mind, intellect, ego. So when it has to go, let it go. And this we can see like in the lives of Swami Tapovan Maharaj. You know, he lived for 60 plus years and he was sick. He was sick and everybody wanted to take him to the doctor, to the hospital. He said, well, now my time has come, right? Death has been waiting for my interview for so long. Why should I deny him? Let him come. And he was just so open to it because he had no connection to his body, mind, intellect. In Viveka Chudamani, it says that for an enlightened being, it's as though there's a dead leaf on a tree. The dead leaf on a tree, it's still part of a tree and it just hasn't fallen yet. And when the prarabdha karma is over, when their karma is over, then the leaf falls and they go. So they're like this dead leaf on a tree. They're not looking at trying to look for a specific time or place to die, not planning their funeral, not planning their cremation, all of that. They're already gone and they're fearless about it. In fact, in our scriptures, in our Ishavasya Upanishad, there's a beautiful mantra there. I'll chant it and I'll explain. It says, Vayuramritam anilamadhedam bhasmantam shariram om krato smara kritam smara krato smara kritam smara. It's actually a mantra for one who's passing away. And this person essentially says, my vayu, my breath, Let it merge with the total breath. Let that breath become air. Vayuhu anilam amritam adhedam. Let it become that immortal air. Bhasmantam shariram. And let this body now be offered to ash. I'm ready. And the only thing it asks is, Om Krato Smara. Oh, my mind, just remember. Kritam. Just remember that thought that I am really that pure self. I am that pure awareness, consciousness. Just remember that thought. Oh, mind, just remember that thought and let me go. So there is no, again, insistence. There's no resistance. Tasya kriyate tasya yamena nacharacha. So now imagine how freely life is lived. So Bhagavad Gita kinchit adhita. Just even a little bit of a study of Bhagavad Gita. Swami Chinmayanandaji used to say, you've gone through the Gita. Has the Gita gone through you? That's a whole different story, right? Ganga Jalalava Karnika Pita. Just having even a little bit of the Ganga water to reform oneself means doing that reflection so that we can transform. Sakradapi yena murari samarcha. Surrendering and seeking grace from the divine to actually make this transformation happen fully. And when it does so, to even take away that ego that I have transformed. Take away even that ego. To that person, kriyate tasya yamena nacharcha. And therefore, bhaja Govindam, Govindam bhaja mudate. This person is free from the fear of death. No qualms with death. When it comes, let it come. Okay, so I'll stop here for a moment just to see if you have questions or thoughts. All right, so let's take up the next verse. We'll just, as I said, read, I'll translate it, and more we will see next week. Verse 21 is a very, very famous verse. And the tagline for this verse is, take me Om. One might ask, what happens if I don't realize this truth here and now? What happens if I don't engage in this pursuit? This is what happens. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam.
Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam.
Punarapi janani jathare shayanam.
Punarapi janani jathare shayanam.
Iha samsare bahudustare.
Iha sansare bahudustare.
Kripaya pare pahi murare.
Krupaya bhare pahi murare.
Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Iha samsare bahudustare. Kripaya pare pahi murare. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Budhamate. So if one doesn't engage in this pursuit of realizing this truth here and now, punarapi, once again janana, once again birth. Punahapi, punaha api means, or punarapi means once again. Once again maranam, once again death. Punarapi janani jatare shayanam. Punarapi, once again, janani jatare, in the mother's womb, lying again in the mother's womb. Iha samsare, this samsara, bahudustare, it's very hard to cross over. Kripaya pare, through thy infinite grace, apare, this samsara which is so hard to cross over. Pahi, save me, Murare, O Murari. Again birth, again death, again lying in the mother's womb. This samsara process is very hard to cross over. Save me, Murari, through thy infinite kindness. So what that verse means, you will see next time. Okay, we'll say the closing prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.